we've started making some videos on YouTube, and there's a core philosophy that we want to explore a little bit in this video, which we're going to try and incorporate in all of our videos, but we haven't really touched on it too much, so we want to explain ourselves a little bit and some of the ideas that have got us sitting in front of a camera talking to it. A lot of it stems around, like the homesteading movement, which, is cool, and a lot of people are doing a lot of really interesting things. But also the reality is that, not everybody can live on a homestead, and that's not going to be possible for a lot of people, and we are included in that group. We're not going to be able to move to a farm and raise pigs and have cattle and live on all these acres. We're going to be living in a city for our entire lives. But
maybe we could raise guinea pigs.
Yeah. Go all Chilean on their butts. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with just a small amount of property. And so instead of dreaming about moving to a homestead and living that lifestyle, we want to show people that you can do a lot of that stuff just from a very small piece of property, and you can kind of get 80% of the way there just by transforming what you already have in front of you. So it's kind of like, instead of living in this dream about this ideal homestead life, it's like you could pretty much do that right now. So stop dreaming and start doing, right? It's kind of like a motivation thing, right? It's not about looking to the future. It's about, like, what can you do now?
I think another idea too that I fight against personally in the homesteading movement is kind of this selfishness of, I'm going to take what belongs to me and move it away from community and society. And I feel like that's fine for you, like that's great that you're creating this life, but maybe of more value is the idea of building a better future. And to do that, we kind of all need to work together. If 100 people move out to the country and put up a huge fence and get a mean dog and get a gun and do their own thing, that's great. But imagine if those 100 people stayed inside of a city, inside of a community, and instead took some of their energy and some of their actions and put it towards like what's going on around them. Like, not just what can I do on my yard, but also what can I bring to people around me by doing what's in my yard. And if you did that, I think that the changes that could happen in that society would be huge. Like, one thing one thing we talk about a lot, me and Ian, is the fact that if you want a government to do something for you, you need to ask for it. There's all these things that governments are doing at all the times, and we hear tons and tons of people in our generation and online and in our social circle, and they're all complaining like, oh, like, I pay all these taxes and I don't get anything for it, but they're not going out there and asking the government to do these things for them. If in a city of a million people, if 1% of those people wanted to have a garden and they didn't have space, if they went to their government and said, we want community garden space, the government's gonna listen. That's a lot of people asking for something. And they're trying to build a community that supports the people that live in there. So if you make that an issue for you, then you're going to see that become the future.
Mm-hmm. And the future is going to be different than what we're currently experiencing, right?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the energy in the homesteading movement. The fact that everyone's looking around and they're saying, like, what I see right now isn't what's going to continue into the future.
Mm-hmm. And change is always a little bit scary, right? Because you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. But if you just look at the aspect of self-driving vehicles and the huge changes that that could have on a cityscape. So like right now we have roads everywhere and we have parking lots. So much of our land is just, you know, for transportation uses only, right? And think about how streamlined that could be in 40 years when, you know, a vehicle is just something that you call up. You don't own it specifically, you know, you just get one when you need one. You know, maybe you have one programmed every morning to come pick you up for work, and, you know, like you do a little carpool with it or something. You know, they're only as big as you need them, you know, more like the size of smart cars than, you know, the size of a big pickup truck. And how much less parking you need downtown, because, you know, you wouldn't be driving downtown and parking your vehicle, you'd just be heading downtown and getting dropped off, and then when you need a vehicle, you know, you just call for it and it comes and gets you. So, you know, you have smaller vehicles, you have far less vehicles owned personally, you have just a lot less space needed for the actual movement of people. Well, like, what happens to all that space? Like, we can reclaim it, and what are we going to do with it? And you know, that's promising, because obviously a lot of places in the world right now are suffering with the consequences of like high property costs. So, you know, that would bring a lot of property in very high density areas back on the market. You know, like, what if those roads, if we only needed half the number of roads that we currently have, and all these parking lots suddenly weren't needed in the same way either, right? Like,
well, and another thing too is a lot of that land isn't private land, it's public land. So if you are, as a community, asking for ways for that to be used, then the government's going to listen. They're like, governments are just complete panderers. So if you're saying, oh, we want this land to be used for park space, we want to put in raised beds into parking spaces, like, they're going to listen to that. That has more value to them than to sell the land to like a developer to build something on there. Like, if you're saying that you want them to do that and you're going to give them your vote for it, then they'll do it. Like, they're, you know, they're driven by more than just profit. That's the nice thing about governments instead of markets.
Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of our generation's ideas haven't been represented by governments because, you know, traditionally our generation is a minority in the voting blocks. So it can be disenfranchising to people, because, you know, the perception is that government isn't representing like our interests, so it almost drives people away from the vote, which in turn makes the problem worse, because, you know, if we are not out there voicing our opinion, then there's even less incentive for them to listen to us and to listen to our ideas and enact them and stuff, because you know, like you said, the future is going to be different than the now. You know, there's this idea that history repeats itself, and in some ways it always will, but, you know, that's a fairly that idea doesn't necessarily explain all situations, and we are entering into, you know, uncharted waters here, because there's more and more people in the world. You know, our population's been exploding, but we're getting such gains in technology that, you know, the need for jobs.
I think another point too is that even though history repeats itself, it doesn't mean that we have to make the same mistakes again and again. Like, we should look and see what patterns work, what works for people, and at the same time we should take also all this new technology and create a new future. You know, that's one of the things about the homesteading movement, the going back to the land and doing everything the old-fashioned way. Like, to a certain point, that's kind of ignorant, because why would you take all this technology that you have at your disposal, like all of these efficiencies that can be gained through everything that we've learned in the last 100 years, and just totally throw it away. Part of the issue is the fact that we have all this new technology, but we're refusing to think outside of the box for how to use it. Like, if one thing that we talk about is, you know, the idea of like big infrastructure and like, you know, like the 1950s, I'm gonna build like this massive thing, this huge project. And maybe that's not the best way to use resources. Maybe a better way is to do 100 small scale projects that then have a huge spread of who it benefits, but ends up getting the same final outcome for 1/10 of the cost. Like, if you're always thinking of doing something one way and refusing to adapt, then how are you going to make the world better? How are you going to come up with solutions to the new problems? You know, and it seems like there's lots of new problems coming up all the time. Like with global warming, like weather patterns are changing, and that causes issues. What do you do with these huge storms? Like, obviously the solutions that have worked for the last 50 years aren't the solutions that are going to keep working in a changing world. I think basically the point of this video is that Ian and I have lots of ideas. You know, and I think that all of you do too. But, you know, if you have intent behind your actions, like, our goal isn't to save money to buy a homestead in the future. In a way, our goal is way, way bigger, because what we want to do is we want to see the world shaped into a future that we think will work better. Like, we look at the world now and we don't like what it looks like it could possibly be, and rather than letting that get us down and making us kind of pull into ourselves, we're trying to think of ways that we can get out there and make positive changes. Like, rather than, you know, running to the hills and, you know, starting our off-grid homestead so when the collapse comes, we're prepared for us and our family. You know, we're trying to imagine a world where people have more enjoyable lives, like better use of space, you know, just something that can actually continue. Because we truly believe that the world that our parents grew up in can't be the world for anyone else. It's kind of,
that was a one-time thing.
It's peak consumption, and so we need to find a more sustainable way to live. But that doesn't necessarily have to mean that most of the people die and we all become tribal, back to the land communities.
Yeah.
You know,
we have to learn to live with less is going to be the reality. You know, people are going to have less space, less income, less like ability to do whatever they want. Like, we're all gonna need to learn to live with less in the future. Just at the rate of consumption currently, like, there's no way that extends forever. It's just not gonna happen. So at some point in time, we need to learn to adjust our lifestyles. And that's going to be a challenge because...
Well, but I also think you see all these trends of minimalism that are out there, like the Condu. You guys probably all know what I'm talking about. But people are learning that living with less is really enjoyable. You know, it's hard to give up stuff. But once you have everything stripped down, it's, you know, it's nice, right?
I'm pretty laid back, and I've based a lot of my life around enjoying the things in life that don't cost money, and a lot of that came from like when I started my business years and years ago. And the very first year it nearly collapsed, which in some ways it would have been better if it had. But I remember I was thinking that I was going to be destitute forever and, you know, saddled with this debt that I'd never be able to repay. And I was like, you know, my only chance at happiness is things that don't cost money. And in a lot of ways that was very freeing, because, you know, I started to look for things and enjoyment in life that didn't cost money. And through that, you know, my whole lifestyle was born, right? Just enjoying things for what they are, right? Enjoying the moments and stuff. And
you know, we look at people who are, oh, like, we only make $100,000 a year and we're drowning, like, we can't make it, we're living paycheck to paycheck. And we go like, what are you spending your money on? Like, where's all this money going? Like, you don't live in a mansion. Like, your mortgage can't be like taking up all that.
yeah,
But, you know, like, at a certain point, I think it's easier to change how you look at things than to change how things actually are. And sometimes changing that perspective, you know, just completely I guess, what am I trying to say? Like, when maybe what is happening isn't the issue. Maybe the issue is how you are looking at it. So we could be sitting here in our beautiful house and our beautiful yard and our beautiful city and going like, oh, our life is the worst, our life sucks, all we want to do is be able to like make some money to buy this 5 acres, but like it's never gonna happen, we need so much money to do that, and we're barely making it through, we're living paycheck to paycheck, how are we ever gonna save money? But we're not doing that. Like, rather we're living the life that we want to live, and you know, it doesn't cost that much, and it doesn't feel hard.
yeah,
But I don't know, like, we hope that in showing you what we're doing with the yard, and also showing you how we think about things and how we imagine what the future could be, that it can help you change how you see what you have around you too. You know, like, obviously we're super lucky to have this yard space, but we haven't always had this yard space, but I feel like we've always had this life in a way.
yeah. We used to live in the trailer.
Yeah, we lived in a trailer park. You know, I lived in an apartment and had a community garden. You know, like, basically, as long as you live with no excuses,
Yeah,
you know, you can make what you want happen. Yeah, so, you know, hopefully...
make change now.
Yeah,
right?
make change now. Like, do it. Just do it. Nike had it right. But, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of insight into what we're about and what we're doing. And obviously we want you to subscribe so you can see more. And, you know, like, I feel like we're probably going to be doing some discussions like this regularly, as well as showing you the yard, because I feel like the ideas are as important as, you know, our badly grown weedy garden. So yeah, stay tuned.
Hands up.
Oh, you should stop it.